The botanical garden at the end of the world. The ship appeared over Tokyo at 3:47 a.m. on a Thursday, and by sunrise, humanity had collectively decided to pretend it wasn't there. Not out of fear, though there was plenty of that, but because the ship did absolutely nothing. It hung there, a silver-gray sphere roughly the size of a city block, perfectly silent, emitting no radiation, responding to no communication attempts, and most frustratingly, completely ignoring every weapons system pointed at it. By the second week, it had become part of the skyline. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto was watering his orchids when it finally made contact. Not with world leaders or military installations, but with him in his small apartment in Shibuya, surrounded by 73 varieties of rare plants he'd spent 15 years cultivating. The knock was polite, 3 gentle taps. Kenji set down his watering can and opened the door. The alien was approximately humanoid in the way that a praying mantis is approximately humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, all arranged in a configuration that suggested parallel evolution or cosmic coincidence. Its skin had the texture of flower petals, shifting through colors that didn't quite exist in terrestrial spectrums. Dr. Yamamoto, its voice sounded like wind through leaves. I apologize for the intrusion, my name is. And here it made a sound like a garden waking up, but you may call me Verdant, I am a gardener. Kenji blinked, a gardener. Yes, may I come in? Your Paphioptilum rothschildianum is magnificent, and I would very much like to see it up close. 20 minutes later, they were having tea. Verdant sat carefully on Kenji's floor cushion, its long fingers wrapped around a cup of sencha, examining the apartment with what could only be described as reverence. You have created a remarkable sanctuary here, it said. 73 species, each with optimal conditions. The humidity gradient you've established between the east and west walls is ingenious. Thank you, Kenji said, still processing the fact that he was serving tea to an extraterrestrial. But I don't understand. You came all this way to look at my plants. Verdant's face rippled through what might have been colors of sadness. We came because we have a position to fill, a critical one, and in 3 million years of searching, we have interviewed exactly 743 candidates across the galaxy. It set down its tea and gestured toward the window, where Tokyo sprawled below and the mothership hung above. I am here to offer you a job, Dr. Yamamoto. Kenji stared. A job. Yes, as you might imagine, the position is somewhat specialized. Over the next hour, Verdant explained. The conservatory was old, older than human civilization, older than humans themselves. A vast network of habitats and seed banks spanning 17 galaxies, preserving species from worlds long dead, ecosystems from civilizations that had risen and fallen and been forgotten. Millions of species, billions of specimens, all carefully maintained in perpetuity. We have curators, of course, Verdant said. My people have tended the conservatory for 3 million years, but there is a problem we have encountered. Our previous head gardener retired last year. She went to explore the rim galaxies, said she wanted to see what gardens grew in the dark. We need someone new. It moved to Kenji's prize orchid, the Rothschild slipper that had taken him 8 years to successfully cultivate from seed. This plant is extinct in the wild. You know this, yes? Yes, Kenji said quietly. But here it is, thriving because you cared enough to save it. Not because someone told you to, not because it was easy, but because you could not bear for it to disappear. Verdant's colors shifted to something profound. That is what we need, what the conservatory needs. Someone who approaches each plant as if it were irreplaceable. Someone who understands that preservation is not about perfect storage, but about maintaining the life itself. You want me to work for you, in space. We want you to be the conservatory's head gardener. The last one was remarkable, a being from a tidal-locked world who specialized in carnivorous forests. Spectacular work, but her expertise was very different from what we need now. We're expanding our temperate and tropical collections, and we need someone with your particular skills. Kenji looked around his apartment. 15 years of work, 73 plants that depended on him for survival, his job at the university, his life. What would it involve? Verdant's colors brightened. The conservatory is vast. You would have a sector, perhaps 50,000 species to start. You would work with my people, but the decisions would be yours. Which species to prioritize, which ecosystems to restore, which seeds to wake from stasis. We have the knowledge, the techniques, the technology. But we need someone who can decide what matters, what's worth saving when you cannot save everything. And if I say no, then we continue searching. There are others on your world we have been watching. A woman in Madagascar who has replanted 40,000 trees by hand. A man in Scotland who tends the last grove of Caledonian pines. A botanist in Brazil who catalogs orchids in dying forests. Any of them would be acceptable. Verdant paused. But you are my first choice. Why? Because you spent 8 years cultivating a single orchid that no one asked you to grow. Because your apartment has 73 species when you could have had 3 or none. Because I have been observing you for 6 months, Dr. Yamamoto, and I have never once seen you take a shortcut. You water by hand when you could automate. You pollinate manually when insects would suffice. You tend your garden with precision and care. That is exactly what the conservatory needs. Kenji walked to his window and looked out at Tokyo, at the millions of lives playing out below, at the mothership hanging silent above it all. He thought about his small apartment, his daily routines, the particular joy of watching a new leaf unfurl. Then he thought about 50,000 species, about ecosystems from dead worlds, about being a gardener not just for Earth but for the galaxy itself. Would I be able to come back, to visit? Of course, though I should mention, time moves differently in the conservatory. We maintain slower temporal fields to extend the preservation cycles. A year for you there might be 5 years here on Earth. It's something to consider. Verdant paused. You would have leave, assistance to cover your duties. The position comes with a residence near the conservatory, quite spacious, with excellent light for personal collections. But the time differential is real. Your friends here will age faster than you. And my plants here. Verdant's colors rippled with what might have been amusement. I was hoping you might bring them. The conservatory has an earth wing naturally. 67,000 terrestrial species. Your orchids would fit beautifully, and I suspect our collection could benefit from your particular attention to the neglected corners. Kenji turned back to face the alien. Can I have time to think about it? Of course, we have been recruiting across several worlds. We can wait a few days for your decision. 3 days later, Kenji stood in his empty apartment, empty except for 73 carefully packed plants and a single bag of personal belongings. His colleague Miko had agreed to water the orchids if he changed his mind. His resignation from the university had been processed, though the chancellor still thought he was joking about the reason. Verdant arrived precisely on time. You're certain? It asked. Kenji looked at his orchid, the Rothschild slipper, blooming now after 8 years of patient work. He thought about 50,000 species waiting in the vast silence of space, tended by immortals who had forgotten why they were tending them. I'm certain, he said, though I have one condition. Name it. No matter how long I work there, no matter how vast the conservatory becomes, I want one corner that's mine, small enough that I can water it by hand. Something I can fail at if I'm not careful, something that will die without me. Verdant's colors shifted through every shade of understanding. You shall have your corner, head gardener Yamamoto. I think you will find the conservatory has many such corners, in fact, waiting for someone who remembers that the best gardens are the ones where the gardener leaves their mark. As they walked toward the transport beam, Kenji carrying his most precious orchid himself, Verdant added almost casually, by the way, we have a species in Section 7 that we have been unable to propagate for 2 centuries. A flower from a methane world, quite temperamental. I thought you might enjoy the challenge. Kenji smiled. What color does it bloom? We don't know. No one has successfully bloomed it in recent memory. Perhaps you will be the first to find out. And as Tokyo fell away beneath them, as the world grew small and the stars grew vast, Kenji held his orchid close and thought that perhaps this was what he had been training for all along. Not to tend a small garden in a small apartment in a small life, but to carry forward the fundamental truth that anything worth saving must be saved one plant at a time, one choice at a time, one careful moment of attention at a time. The conservatory waited, vast and ancient and full of corners no one had loved in far too long.